Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark, and we are starting Ezra chapter 8 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, in the first 14 verses of Ezra chapter 8, it gives a list of those people who go up with Ezra from Babylon. Now, as we said, the last part of chapter 7, that Ezra takes this letter that King Ahasuerus gives to him, and he goes around Babylon to the different leaders of the tribes and of the families and shows them this letter, and he encourages people to go back to Jerusalem with him. And now we're going to see a list of the names of those who go. Now, in this chapter is also a list of all the different items that they took with them. They took 1,754 males, that means men, 100 talents of gold, 750 talents of silver, and it is not stated if any women went with them. And it took 4 months to travel to Jerusalem. So in Ezra chapter 8, verses 1 to 14, I'm not really going to go over this list of names. We will be starting in verse 15 as we study this chapter. And just because women are not mentioned doesn't mean women didn't go. Women and children did not go with them. It's just mentioning the men that went here with them. Now, verse 15 says, And I gathered them together to the river that runs to Ahava, and there abode we in tents 3 days, and I viewed the people and the priests, and found there none of the sons of Levi. Now, the river of Ahava, some Bible atlases do not even have this river in their atlas. But I found one source that said that this place, this river, where they possibly stayed, was about 9 miles north of Babylon. Now this would seem about right. It would be close enough to Babylon for everyone to meet before they leave. So basically, Ezra had the letter, and he goes around to these different tribes and heads of families, encourages them to go. Some of them said, yes, we'll go. We'll go back to Jerusalem and worship God. And Ezra would say, okay, then if we're going to go, you know what? There's a place about 9 miles up the road, and we're going to meet up there. It's out of the city. It's away from everything. There's a lot of open land there, and there's a river there, and we can meet. We got water, we'll have food, and we can all gather together up there. We'll all meet up there, and then from there, we'll go to Jerusalem. And that's kind of what's happening, what you're seeing here. And there are other sources that told me that this, where they met, this river of Ahava, is about 80 miles northwest of Babylon, all right? But maybe they didn't go that far. Is it possible? Yes, but they probably didn't go that far away from Babylon to meet together. And it says here in verse 15 that they abode in tents for 3 days. So they got to this place, and they stayed in tents for 3 days. And this was a good time now to stop and to assess their situation. They're leaving Babylon. They just left Babylon, the city, and they're outside, kind of in the outskirts of the city of Babylon. And now they're in this probably open area, and now they're spending 3 days in tents, and they're going to assess the whole situation. The people, the offerings that are being sent, making sure we got enough camels and donkeys and carts to go to Jerusalem, and the direction we're going to go, how we're going to get there, that kind of thing. And it also says in verse 15 that he says here, and I viewed the people, all right? And I viewed the people, meaning Ezra viewed the people. Now, this Hebrew word for viewed means to discern, and it means to understand. So Ezra was more than just looking after their welfare, but he was interested in the kind of people that were going on this journey. So up until now, he had not done it yet. All right. Up until now, Ezra had not really looked at the people who was going with him, and found, looking at the different tribes and everyone going with him there. Otherwise, he would have known how many Levites he had on this journey. He doesn't know. He's encouraging people, and they're saying yes. They go up to this place, the river, near this river that's going to Ahava, this area that's designated. They go there and they meet. And now that they're there, Ezra is going to finally look at these people and find out who we got going with us on this journey. And it says here, he says, and I viewed the people and the priests. And at this time, now it's at this time, that he found out that there were none of the sons of Levi. Now he realizes, they're all gathered together. Now he realizes there's nobody from Levi here, right? Only 74 Levites had returned when Zerubbabel went to Jerusalem 80 years ago. This was in Ezra chapter 2 and verse 40. Only 74 went back. And that was when they had 50,000. Zerubbabel took 50,000 Jewish people back to Jerusalem, but only 74 were Levites. One would understand why they would not want to go to Jerusalem and serve in the temple. First, they would have to completely uproot their lives and families and go on this long journey. But also, the drastic change from their easy life in Babylon to the now strict duties and routines of temple service, right? If you had an easy life in Babylon, you're Jewish and maybe you're, whatever you're doing, you're working and stuff. And now a proposition comes, hey, let's go to Jerusalem. Let's start serving God and worshiping God. We're going to be sacrificing animals and worshiping our God, right? Well, in a sense, one can kind of understand why they might want to shrink back from going to Jerusalem. And then here, 2,000 people he's got, and he has no Levites even offer to go. This is the same temptation that comes against backslidden Christians. Remember, I said the book of Ezra is a picture of a backslidden Christian. They're in the promised land, and they leave Egypt, they go through the wilderness, and they cross the Jordan River, and they get into the promised land in Joshua. They get into the promised land. This is about picture of salvation. They enter the promised land. Now they're in the promised land. Now they're saved. But they stray in their hearts towards God. What happens? God gives them over to their enemies. He causes them to go into captivity for 70 years. right? And this is what happens with Christians who turn away from God for one reason or another. They stray away from God, back into worldliness. Maybe they're angry with God because someone died they prayed for, and they was their best friend or was their mother or their father, and they prayed fervently for him, and they still died, and they're angry with God, and they not going to church anymore. I'm not going to read the Bible anymore, right? And their hearts stray from God, and they go back into worldliness. God gives them over to that worldliness for a while. Oh, doesn't mean they're not saved. Doesn't mean he's not watching over and caring for them. It just means God lets them reap what they sow. They go into that worldliness, right? And it's like them going in. It's like the children of Israel going into Babylon, being taken captive into Babylon. Well, Ezra is a picture of a backslidden Christian, someone who goes back into this world for whatever reason. Right? Why do I want to return to God? Then I will have to if I return to God, I'll have to go to church every Sunday. Right? I'll have to start praying all over again. And I'll have to start reading the Bible again. And I'll have to associate with other Christians who I think they're judging me. Right? Why do I want to go back to church? I did that years ago. I know what they're like. Now I have to start praying again, going to church again, and then I got to go meet Christians, and they're going to want me to go to midweek Bible study and all these other things. Right? Hassle, 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 hassle. Right? I will come back to God, but I will come back on my own terms. This is what some Christians think, backslidden Christians think. I'll come back, but I'll come back on my own terms. I will regulate what I do. And I think that here's Ezra, and he's got this group of people, but he finds out there's probably the most important people that needed to come were the Levites, and there were none there. So you kind of understand maybe a little bit of why the Levites were a little bit skittish about wanting to go back. So now we're going to see that Ezra is going to make an effort here to, before they officially leave the area of Babylon and go to start making their journey to Jerusalem, he's going to make another attempt to go and get some Levites to go with them. Now, verse 16 says, "Then sent I for Eleazar and for Ariel, for Shemaiah and for Elnathan and for Jarib and for Elnathan and for Nathan and for Zechariah and for Meshullam, chief men also of Joarib, and for Elnathan, men of understanding." Now, it seems that Ezra specifically chose these men, believing and hoping that God would use their influence and position to convince the Levites to go to Jerusalem and to serve in the temple. So Ezra here sees there's no Levites, and he needs Levites. He needs it. He wants them to go with him to Jerusalem, because he's going to need them in order for he's never been, as far as we know, he's never been to Jerusalem, so he doesn't know what's going on down there. He doesn't know, what the situation is, but in his going, he wants to take Levites with him. And he realizes now there's no Levites here, so he's going to hand pick some men to go and get Levites. And this is what now verse 17 says, "And I sent them with commandment unto Iddo, the chief at the palace of Cassiphia. And I told them what they should say unto Iddo and to his brethren, the Nethinims, at the place Cassiphia, that they should bring unto us ministers for the house of God. Ministers for the house means Levites, all right? Now, Casiphia, the exact location of Casiphia is not known, all right? It just isn't known. But it is believed to be not too far from Ahava, where they were stationed, where they were camped out, camped out at. So Ezra, he sends these 11 men to speak to Iddo, who was a Nethinim. Iddo was a Nethinim. All right? And again, now it is interesting that Ezra already had knowledge of the existence of Nethinims and also of Levites in the area of Casiphia. All right? So he said, Ezra sends these 11 men to Casiphia. Now, how did he know that? Well, he probably knew somehow. Somehow he found out that in the area of Casiphia, I don't know if it was a town or a region or a city, whatever it was, Casiphia, he found out that there were Levites living there. All right? And he's sending these 11 men to go there to talk to Iddo. And Iddo is a Nethinim. Remember, Nethinims are Gentile people who served in the temple. All right? Now, it is possible that Iddo, although he was a Nethinim, was some kind of a chief or a ruler over the Jews and other Nethinims in Casiphia. Now, we do not know if his position was given by the Persian government or not. Okay? Iddo he sends him to Iddo. So Iddo had to be some kind of an important man in Casiphia. But he was a Nethinim. And Ezra knew that. So he's sending these 11 men to Iddo for this purpose, to get the Levites. Now, but there are other commentators which say that this text in verse 17 should say, unto Iddo, his brethren, and the Nethinims. All right? Unto Iddo and his brethren and the Nethinims. They believe, these other scholars believe that Iddo was not a Nethinim, but that he was a Jew. He was a Levite. And this is why he had this position of authority. So, some commentators say that Iddo was a Nethinim. They translate this verse that Iddo was a Nethinim and that he was leader in Casiphia. Other scholars say, no, you're reading it the wrong way. It should say unto Iddo, his brethren, and the Nethinim. All right, that Iddo was separate from the Nethinims, so that he was actually a Levite, and that he was the head of the Levites in Casiphia. Now, and it says here in the last part of verse 17 that he told them, right? And I said unto them, and I sent unto them the commandment unto Iddo, the chief of the place of Casiphia, and I told them what they should say. So here Ezra says, I told them what they should say. And literally it means I put words in their mouth to speak. So Ezra told them exactly what to say to Iddo when they got to Casiphia. All right, to encourage and to get Levites to come with them to Jerusalem. All right, we're going to stop here at verse 17. We're going to continue at verse 18 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.